Okay.
Nice. Cool. Right. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. So I think most people in housing needs kind of know me by now through previous things, but if you don't, my name's Tom Harrison. I'm the program director for the Housing Digital Program. So this is our first kind of show and tell for what we're calling the alpha phase of the work we're doing across housing needs. So we did discovery with Rob and Sarah over the last few months, like kind of making efforts to make a better understanding of what the challenges are in housing needs, what the challenges are that our service users have. And this is kind of the next phase where we start looking, okay, what can we actually do about that, and start testing out some ideas. So I'm going to give a quick intro. Then Sarah and Rob are going to talk a bit about the work done so far and just like kind of summarise the relevant bits of discovery and how that's going to feed into the work they're going to be doing on this over the next few months. And then Miranda's going to be talking about the work we're going to be doing on the web content, and then we're going to talk a bit about our next steps. So yeah, essentially we're looking at three things, and initially I thought we could do separate show and tells for these because they are separate bits of work, but actually they're so intertwined with each other, like trying to pull it apart is maybe a bit silly. So yeah, we're just going to do it, run everything as one show and tell. I've included people on the invite that I know in housing needs, but it's not everybody. So please feel free to forward the invite on to all your colleagues, anybody you think might be interested, whether in housing or other areas. So it's open for as many people as like to attend. Cool. So yeah, where to start? So as I say, we've been doing this this discovery over the last few months. We've kind of got some big ideas coming out of that, what we can do to kind of improve things for our service users. We've been speaking with Dwayne a lot, and the team leaders, managers in housing needs kind of understand that. And we've kind of got two ideas that have come out of that. So we can skip back a slide, Miranda. Yeah, so two there, which is the rough sleeper pathway you can see there, and how people access temporary accommodation. So the initial chunk of work we're going to do around our web content is going to focus on these because there's like a natural like synergy there. And then we're going to start looking at other areas. So the web content will cover everything across housing, but then at some point that'll like kind of branch off from the main like housing needs thrust. And so yeah, that's kind of where we are. With that, I'll pass over to Sarah and Rob. As Miranda said, we're recording the session, so if anyone would like to ask any questions as we're going through, then feel free to like shout out and interrupt. It's all good. With the obvious like caveat that that will then be in the recording. Once we finish the presentation, we'll stop recording. And if anyone wants to like kind of ask any other questions like off camera, then yeah, please feel free. So yeah, with that, I'll pass over to Sarah and Rob.
Thanks, Tom. Just checking because I can't see anybody at the moment, so you can hear me, can't you? And
loud and clear.
Lovely, that's perfect. That's all I wanted to know. So right, just looking at the core digital team as well, we've got Rob, who's the user researcher, myself, who's classed as the product owner and the project manager. We've got Miranda, who's the content designer, Tom, who's the program director, and we've also got Katrina Dixon, who's the senior content designer from Libertat, and she's working with us specifically on the web content stream. So I just want to go through just a very brief project overview of how we've arrived at where we got to. So the point of doing our discovery and our aims are to assess the needs of the housing officers so they're able to provide the required levels of support to people in need of help. So relating to particular addressing better ways of capturing, storing and sharing both property and personal data. That's quite a wide thing to be looking at, but it's those two simple property and personal data areas that we'll be focusing on, or that we've been focusing upon. And the second aim of the discovery and the review with housing needs has been to understand whether or not the planned implementation of the software package Abritas would improve the service delivery across the housing needs teams at Redbridge. So this was going to be in terms of both the support they provide to residents and the way that information is captured, stored and shared. So it was just to make sure that what we were looking at with Abritas was sufficient and suitable for what was required by housing needs. So as part of discovery, we looked at and we spoke to all of these different teams. So we spoke to housing needs, we've spoken to housing solutions, housing supply, roof sleepers. We've looked at the review and service improvement team and housing strategy. So they're all the different teams within housing needs at the moment. Whilst we've been doing discovery as well, there's been some changes that have been going on with regard to the first point of contact, and we can come on to those as well as we're going forward. The partners that we've spoken to, the Single Homeless Project, Westminster Drug Project, Welcome Centre, Salvation Army, Capital Letters and the London Boroughs. The first four were mainly part of the rough sleeping sprints that Rob and I worked on. Capital Letters and the London Boroughs have been throughout everything else, mainly to do with the allocation side as well. The service users, we've been speaking to service users from temporary accommodation, we've spoken to homeless applicants, we've spoken to people with no recourse to public funds, which is the NRPF, people with transfer requests and people on the housing register. We're going to be doing more of these research, user research elements as well as we're going through the website. And the systems that we've been looking at, we looked at the Abritas choice-based letting system, the Abritas wider system, which is the one that we were looking at putting in, Hope, TASIS, Adam and iWorkflow. We'd also looked at Haxis and eSINs as well as part of this. In addition to those on the slide, we've also spoken to some people in adult social care and public health teams within Redbridge. And again, we'll continue to work with those different teams going forward.
Sarah, just stop you there for a second. I think we've got a question from, hold on a minute. Did we have a question? I thought I saw a raised hand. Maybe I didn't.
Yes, it's Terry. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Hi. Just on the systems, the iWorkflow, is that the same as information at work?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, info at work. That's it.
Yeah. So document storing. Yes.
That's it. That's
Okay.
it, Terry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify the name. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. So we also, going forward, we want to work more closely with assets and property services for the stock TA element and the temporary accommodation management. So, but again, we'll come on to that later on. So our working processes, we're looking at the user needs and we've been in discovery. We've done quite a lot of discovery. It's been about 6 months worth now, and we're just moving into alpha. So the way our working practices work, because we're in an agile process, we're starting off with what users actually need, and this research is part of the discovery phase. From there, we consider some options to take forward and develop into a prototype called alpha. So this is where we are now. We've gone through discovery, we've highlighted some areas that we can focus upon, the website being one of them. And we want to improve these and do a bit of jiggery pokery with them and look at, see how things work as part of the alpha phase. So we find out if it works by showing it to real users, showing what we've done to real users, and this is what part of the show and tell is. So we can come back to you in the future in the next fortnightly show and tells and show you what we've done, how it works, is it good, is it bad, and that sort of thing. If it works, brilliant, we can move on and we can go on to the we can go on and make some more changes. But if it doesn't work, we can go back a step. So it's iterative in this way, and it's a lot more flexible and a lot more agile. We can do more research, we can try again. We may have lost a little in time, but we've gained a lot in what we've been doing in the user research, and we've developed some great insight. So this part of the process that we're in now we'll be able to develop and deliver a service that truly meets the needs of the end users. So we'll be working with yourselves. I'm going to hand over to Rob to go through the themes from Discovery. There were a number of themes that came out of Discovery. We've got the 12 here, and we've split them into external and internal experiences. So the external were the resident experiences. The majority of these are going to be covered as part of the first contact, which is what we're looking at with the website. The staff experience are more on the developing IT side and the developing systems side, but it's also the processes and how people work together. So it's people within housing needs themselves, but it's also within other teams within Redbridge and external to Redbridge. So it's just making sure that people communicate, people can get the information together, we can improve workflow, we can share best practice, and we've got clear working processes. Rob, over to you.
Thanks, Sarah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. If you just back up, please, just one slide. I just wanted to emphasize, just following what both Tom and Sarah have said, the result of the discovery, the way we kind of went through all the different conversations we had, both with yourselves and with end service users, we extracted the insights from those one-to-one interviews into those 12 themes that Sarah just shared on that previous slide. And what we've done is we've, based on those key themes, we've identified these 3 key areas that we're going to be focusing our efforts on over the next few months. So the first one, which here it's termed as digital front door, but what we mean by that is really the way in which people are able to engage with London Borough of Redbridge online, be it through the London Borough of Redbridge website, be it through other digital channels, social, for example. But it's really looking at how effectively we engage with people through those digital channels. So that's what we mean there by digital front door. The second area, which we're calling using the rough sleeper pathway, this is really about just how clear we are in communicating outwards what people can expect in terms of support from Redbridge if they find themselves without a roof, without a home, and on the streets. And obviously the cohort we're talking about here, they're not necessarily people who are going to be surfing the internet on a daily basis, going to London Borough of Redbridge website. So it's about understanding the ways in which those people do engage with support services, with the partners, be it Single Homelessness Project, be it Westminster Drug Project, be it Welcome Centre, and how effectively we're working together with those partners to provide a very joined up service to those people out on the streets. And the third area deals with how effectively our temporary accommodation service is working ultimately. So both in terms of people being able to access temporary accommodation and people being able to move on from that temporary accommodation into more permanent accommodation. Thanks, Sarah. On to the next. So we're just going to look at each one of those with a little bit more detail. So the first one, so yeah, here we're using the term first contact as opposed to digital front door. But it's, as I said, it's really about how effectively we're working online to engage with people. And as this quote attests from one of the housing solutions officers we spoke to during the discovery, if people could go online, you could say to people, okay, go online, there's a form there, fill out the form and just upload your document. And then it would come through to us in a separate inbox. It would then stop the kind of needle in the haystack process. So this is just, I guess, just a quote that represents one of the key issues that that was shared with us during discovery about the fact that at the moment there's just one email inbox where a lot of different types of requests come through too, and how could we better address the different types of support that people are coming to asking for through the website, and could we actually be doing more to enable people to, if you like, self-serve, as opposed to obliging people. For an example, today, the need that they need to call and have that initial conversation with someone from Redbridge in order then to be sent a link to complete that initial application form. So just really looking at that process, for example, and at the same time, reviewing all of the content that falls within the housing needs umbrella on the website. So be it social housing, temporary accommodation, and indeed the rough sleeper support. So what we're showing underneath the quote are the different themes, the different areas of improvement, if you like, that we identified from the discovery that we aim to really be addressing through this activity. So from the point of view of internal kind of staff themes, there's improving workflow. So the way in which data comes in from residents through the website. And then, as you can appreciate, most of the themes for this one are the external user-facing themes. So how people initially engage with the council, ensuring that, Adam, I'll come to you in 1 second, thank you, ensuring that we're setting realistic expectations in terms of the content that we publish online, because that has come up a lot during the discovery. How well people understand what they can expect to receive from the council, be it in terms of the type of accommodation they're eligible to receive and what's expected from them in terms of ensuring that they've done everything they should be doing to seek accommodation. Digital front door is this umbrella term we use for how well we're engaging digitally, and then indeed frontline support. So this is really looking at the role of that person who picks up the phone and answers that initial call, that initial inquiry, and how effectively that level of service works alongside what we can offer through the digital platform. Please, Adam, thank you.
If we had a form submission system like that, how practicable would it be to add some kind of code box, a bit like a discount code on a commercial website, so that that could then automatically influence how that submission was treated? So, for example, if outreach workers, rather than having their own way of submitting, could submit via the website, but then input a code that was only available to them, could we then automate how we directed those queries? Because if we could do that, we could give something to social services, we could give something to partners, and what we could do is we could have a really straightforward, everyone uses the same form, but by having a single box where people input either a one-off or a personalized code that they had, we could then have some quite sophisticated redirecting of that information.
Thanks, Adam. That's a really interesting idea. The ability to kind of tag your inquiry based on the context of that is certainly something we should look at. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's really useful. Thanks, Adam.
Okay, so this slide is just this just provides three, if you like, key areas. Three key activities, if you like, we're going to be doing within this line of this stream of work of First Contact. So first and foremost, it's about making the content clearer, ensuring that it stays relevant, up to date, and easy to understand. It's intuitive. And I mean, the reason we're doing this is really to better balance out demand in terms of people calling housing needs teams and housing management teams, and ensuring that where possible, people are able to address their needs through using the digital channels as opposed to feeling obliged to pick up the phone. So what we're going to be doing first of all is looking at housing needs. And by housing needs, we mean looking at that whole homelessness journey umbrella, if you like, and the content that sits within that across applying for and understanding eligibility for temporary accommodation, social housing, and the rough sleeper pathway. And underpinning all this work, the key working principle that we're going to be adopting here is involving end service users at all stages of the process for creating this web content. So this first round of interviews that we're organising at the moment is around just really asking a series of relatively open-ended questions to understand their needs and from the different types of contexts that different types of users are in. And then from there, we'll be using that insight to inform the content that we create. And then we'll be going back to them to ask their opinions on that content. So it's really, you know, in a sense, it's like co-design with the end service users on the content, as opposed to us just sitting in a room, writing the content and publishing it. Thank you, Sarah. Next. So the second alpha is around the rough sleeper pathway. Now we've called this using the rough sleeper pathway because very much we want to be considering it from the point of view of the person on the receiving end of the service. So the person who does find themselves in the streets or threatened with having to sleep out on the streets. So we've just used this quote from one of the specialist housing solutions officers we spoke to during the discovery. If I'm homeless tonight, or I've been rough sleeping the last couple of nights, how do I know who I can contact? You probably wouldn't. Often it's a case of a member of the public seeing somebody rough sleeping and referring them to StreetLink. StreetLink notifies the outreach team. It isn't always easy because sometimes if you're sleeping rough, sometimes you're moving on for your own safety. Really looking at here, the way in which information is shared between the partner services, so the likes of Single Homelessness Project, Welcome Centre, Westminster Drug Project, Project Malachi, how information is shared around rough sleepers with London Borough of Redbridge rough sleeper team, and how effectively we're able to assess the needs of these people and get them into the appropriate accommodation, and having a very clear pathway of that process that everyone understands and is able to adopt. So the themes that we're really looking at here from the discovery is, from the point of view of the external facing themes, it's that first contact, how effectively we're engaging with this particular cohort, be it through our partners. And from the point of view of the internal themes, it's just being very clear on our working processes. So across, you know, the teams that are tasked with addressing these needs, both across rough sleepers, housing solutions, housing supply, and improving the workflow, the way in which these teams work together, and ultimately being able to have a single view of the information around each of these people accessible by each team that needs to be able to, you know, be involved in processing that person's case. Thanks, Sarah. So here are just 4 of the kind of key activities we're looking to be doing around this alpha. The first one is really documenting, clarifying that workflow around the registration and assessment and placing of rough sleepers. So we had a workshop with the rough sleepers team and with team leads from Housing Solutions and Housing Supply, and commissioning people from the commissioning team were also present a few weeks ago. And so a direct follow on from that workshop will be work to really, clarify that workflow and then indeed test it with partners and staff to ensure everyone's on board with it. And alongside that, we want to be working closely with the commissioning team just to clarify roles and responsibilities across both housing officers in London Borough of Redbridge and the partner services, SHP, Welcome Centre, and the role they play at different stages of the rough sleeping pathway. And finally, how we report on the information around this particular cohort and exactly what we're required to report and how we're doing that reporting. So 4 key activities, and as you can appreciate, I mean, each one of these needs to be broken down into a set of key tasks, and that's part of the work that we're going to be doing in the next sprint. Adam.
Yes, the word of caution, clearly important to document our reporting structures, but also they're not static, they're dynamic. So DLUC are holding a workshop tomorrow because it sounds like they're about to completely rework all the performance indicators we work to.
Right.
So
Oh,
there are significant changes abreast.
Right.
That's tomorrow, Adam, is it?
Yep.
Right. Is that just purely for Redbridge?
No, it's being it's national. So
right,
there's been a piece of work led by the Homeless Impact, can't remember what they're called, who have come up with some recommendations. There was a briefing on it last week. There is a whole day event that DLUC are coordinating tomorrow where there'll be workshops. And I'm not entirely sure what's coming out of it, but it's clear that there are significant changes afoot.
No, thanks for that, Adam. We'll look into that. Thank you.
Okay, and then the third alpha, the final one we wanted to share with you today is around temporary accommodation. So again, considering it from the point of view of the end service user, if you like, we're calling this accessing temporary accommodation. Now, as this quote from one of the team leaders in Housing Supply, I mean, this was shared with us during the discovery. It's known as temporary, but it's not so temporary anymore. But the idea is we give it to them in the interim until they either get a council property or we discharge them into the private sector. It's really looking at.
You're back. So I'm just saying you've frozen on up for a second.
Thank you, Miranda. I'll turn my video off. Hopefully that will help. Can you hear me okay now?
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Okay. So this is really looking at the service that we provide around temporary accommodation from the point of view of applying for, excuse me, temporary accommodation through to how effective we are at moving people on from temporary accommodation into a more permanent accommodation. So it comprises these themes that we got from Discovery around how clearly we're communicating to people what they can expect in terms of obtaining temporary accommodation. And then once they've actually made an application, how effectively we're keeping people informed on the status of their application. And then from the point of view of internal themes, well, a key one here, and I think there's overlap between systems talking and multiple screens, because as we know, there are key systems here, be it TASIS, be it Adam, be it indeed
Hope.
Thank you, Hope, that each provide key pieces of the is something we really want to be addressing in this piece of work. And that also kind of goes into the workflow around the use of those systems. If we go on to the next slide, we've just listed some of the key activities we want to be looking at here. So the first one is around really, again, just looking at that workflow, both from the point of view of registering properties eligible for temporary accommodation, and aiming to really see how we can get better at ensuring there is that move on, that flow through for service users to get through to permanent accommodation. Working with different teams, in London Borough of Redbridge to make the best use of housing stock, and also looking at supply team to look at options with PRS and other registered providers. Sarah, if there's anything you'd like to add on this,
No,
please.
I think just from this, I think it was the additional work that we want to do, particularly around the assets teams and property services and getting repairs and everything done in a timely manner and making sure that we've got the support there from adult social care. But I think the key thing is working with Sasha's team very closely to look at the options, because they're doing a lot of work already. They're pretty maxed out as well with working with registered providers, but we just want to see if we can do anything in different formats, in different ways, in working with other organisations. So it's that sort of thing that we want to be looking at as well. And again, it's part of the alpha, so it's trial, going back, seeing if it works, and if it does, great. If it doesn't, we can go back and keep researching. So yeah, that's all I wanted to add, really.
Thanks, Sarah.
We have got a question from Carol.
Yeah, please, Kel.
Hi. So I don't think you want to overdo it on working with assets, because they don't really have very much to do with temporary accommodation apart from modular. It's the corporate landlord in terms of our hostels.
Right.
But the vast majority of people who are in temporary accommodation, we're not responsible for the repairs bit. That's down to the managing agents and the landlords. I would say, going back to your previous slide there, Rob, where you were talking about giving people information and making sure they understand, the key thing that 97% of these people need to understand is they are not getting rehoused in social housing. So it's absolutely, we've got to be crystal clear with people that their expectation should not be that they will get rehoused in social housing, because the vast majority of these people are going to be rehoused in the private rented sector. And that does not, and they also, we need to make it clear that that does not mean that they're going to get rehoused in Redbridge.
Yeah.
So what we are looking for is to provide them with affordable, sustainable tenancies that they can live in and manage and afford. I think it would be good if we can, link to the, we need to update all the pages about the register and everything like that, because they're all massively out of date. But for the last 2 years, we have only let all the registered providers in the borough, the council and all the others, we let 235 properties last year and 235 properties the year before. We have more than 235 people presenting as homeless every single month.
Yeah.
Although we don't necessarily accept all of them, and they don't necessarily all go on the register. There are 6,500 people on the housing register. It is simply a question of mathematics. One number does not go into another. And but we see people coming through. I receive members' inquiries and complaints and things like that, where people are just like, when am I getting my council house? You are not. And particularly if you are a large family, somebody like Terry, who's on the call, will be able to tell you the last time we let a 4-bed or a 5-bed, but we haven't got very many, and we don't let very many. So it's all about understanding the reality of the situation. It is extremely unlikely that you are going to get rehoused in social housing. And that is a message that we have to start saying from the beginning. It's about this affordable, sustainable tenancy in the private rented sector, or any number of our different partners. But it's almost certainly not going to be social housing.
No,
thanks, Carol. That's really useful. Carol. Okay. Right. And then over to Miranda.
Okay. Hi, thanks, Sarah and Rob. Next slide. Cool. Right, so the web content stream, it's a little part of the project which we're actually starting work on now, so actually doing something. And so it's talking about what the current problem is with the housing web content. So touching on what Carol just talked about, we know that the content is out of date. We know that it's not meeting the needs of our users. So the content stream is part of the first contact part of the project that Sarah and Rob both spoke about, with the digital housing front door. And with that, we've appointed Libertat as our content design partner. So Libertat, they're headed by Padma McGillen, who used to be head of content for Government Digital Service. So they've got lots of experience in helping public sector clients with their web content. So working with Libertat, we're going to develop a strategy to design the web content for housing services. We're going to engage with our users first for housing services to understand what their needs are. So that goes hand in hand with what you were saying, Carol. So we need to put across our key messages. So, you know, what does it mean if you're on the housing register? What does it mean if you're going into temporary accommodation? Following on from that, we're going to, as I said, we're going to develop the strategy to meet the needs of our users. And then we're going to actually redesign and create web content around the needs of our service users, starting with housing needs. So by redesigning web content, we're just going to be going from the beginning. We're going to like take down what we've got already and, you know, going from the ground up again. Thanks, Sarah. So as I said, we've started this project. So we've done sprint 1, which is like 2 weeks worth of work. We've had a kick-off workshop with key stakeholders within housing needs to define what the project scope is, the project goal, and who our key stakeholders are. We've also been contacting the stakeholders to identify who to interview for our research. We've gone for a cross-departmental and partnership approach. So both Sarah and Rob mentioned various partners that we're working with. We're going to do this approach with the web content as well. So we've been liaising with colleagues in community safety and family, adults and children services for domestic violence. We've also been liaising with colleagues in hostels, also the resident engagement team as well. So they manage engagement with both leaseholders and our social tenants. So this time we're including service users, which you know, it's a bit of a departure from what we've done before. We're going to focusing on what their needs are. So these are the people who use our website to find out more about our services and to find information. Pop on to the next slide. Okay, so during sprint 1, we've also continued with the business as usual web tasks as well. We've been working on a housing solutions e-form. It's a first contact form with Amma and her team as well. That's gone through testing and we're just finalising that, and hopefully we'll be able to go live with that and we'll be able to implement that on the website pretty quickly. We've also been actioning the web content requests for business as usual. Like, I don't know if Shahan is on the call, but there's some content about private rentals and capital letters that needs to go up. And Aishan and Trusha, who work in the digital team, they're going to be supporting this web content stream. They've also rearranged web author training for the housing needs team for early June. That's a whistle-stop tour of web content because we've only got 3 minutes left. So next steps.
Shall I go through these, Miranda?
Yeah, okay.
So as Miranda's just said, we're arranging and conducting user research with service users for web content as part of its first contact. Rob and I are going to be speaking with, and Miranda are going to be speaking with, as Miranda's just said, a wide range of stakeholders, both internal and external, but we're going to also be speaking with the users, the service users, because we want to understand what works well and what doesn't work well, and the messages and how clear the messages need to be. So we're in process of organising those at the moment. We're also arranging discussions with commissioning teams and partners for the rough sleeping processes. And this goes back to the work that we did earlier in May as part of the rough sleeping day that we had. We're going to start a review of the temporary accommodation in use to focus upon the blockages and the reasons for these blockages. And it's as Rob mentioned earlier, we just want to understand, we want to get to a process that there is a seamless flow through, which sounds dead easy, but we appreciate it's far from easy. So there's going to be a lot of people concerned and a lot of people involved in that. and we want to organise a workshop to map out the process for requesting temporary accommodation. So that will be working with Sasha and her team, and looking at the wider private rented sector and the move-ons and everything like that as well. There's information here for you to follow us. Sorry, who was that?
Yeah. Sorry, Sarah, just saying there's a question from Terry.
Oh, right, sorry.
Yeah, hi, Sarah. For process of requesting temporary accommodation, just kind of flagging up that is also useful at the same time to look at the ending of the temporary accommodation, because there are also blockages and very many processes in ending it. So
no, that's a really good point. Thanks, Terry. So yeah, it'll be the complete, the holistic view of it, and how it's used and how it's accessed and how it's ended. So yeah, thank you. So that's it. That was our show and tell for this point. I think this one was a little bit longer because we wanted to give you a bit of background as well, but subsequent ones will be a lot quicker, and just focus upon that specific sprint.
Okay, I'm going to stop recording in case anyone wants to sneak a quick question in without being recorded. So let me just stop the recording.